The Legend of Zelda. What more can you say about this game series that hasn't been said already before? The Legend of Zelda is one of those games that gains so much critical attention just by the sheer groundbreaking nature of it. The first thing that you saw in that game was something that drew your eye, something that you knew you had to do. You felt like you had a quest to complete. It's one of those games that's just been loved by fans and casual gamers and professional gamers and everyone in the world alike. No matter what happens, I find myself at one point or another coming back to this game for any sort of reason that may be, whether it be that I'm just, playing it for a Let's Play channel that I don't have anymore, reviewing it on this channel that I just started for some reason out of nowhere, or that I just want to brag to my friends about what a great classic gamer I am. No matter what you say, undeniably, this game is going to go up there with one of those greats. This series is one of the greats that goes up there with Mario and Sonic, which is not so much in recent. And you know that no matter what you do with this game, it's going to be one of those greats that's just going to live on in history and be, no pun intended, a legend. This game, when it first came out, took the gaming industry by storm just by how great it was to start off with. You had such a simple idea that it just worked. Never before. It's like, hey, you want to make a great game? You bet your ass I want to make a great game. Okay, let's do it. Let's go. We got all the time in the world. We haven't made a great game yet. Let's make a great game right now. One of the first things you'll notice about the game Legend of Zelda, the first one anyway, is that you really are drawn to the left side of the screen. Why? Because there's a big hole in there. There's not a whole lot you can do. You just walk around in circles until you realize, maybe I should go into that cave over there. People as by nature are explorative. That's what they do. So you see something that grabs your interest, you want to go explore it. That looks like a cave. Caves are pretty cool, right? So, you walk into that cave, and the first thing you see is an old man who comes up with a text. It's dangerous to go alone. Take this! And he gives you a sword. A sword. Already he's playing with our emotions on how we as people just want to be that swordsman. We want to live in those times that we couldn't live in. We were born so late that we didn't get to live in those medieval eras where swordplay was almost a common thing. It was one of those things that just immediately hooked your attention, that got you to be in love with this game. It played with your emotions in such a way that you just knew. You knew this is what you wanted to do. You did not regret that decision. And this is only the first screen of the game. Technically the second, but I mean, are we really going to do that right now? Is that what we're going to do? One of the first things you notice about it is just how open world this game is. You walk in, you talk to the old man, he gives you a sword, you're on your own from there on. Yeah, that's it. And so you walk out, you're like, I could go explore another cave. I could go burn down a bush. I could stab an enemy. You shoot and lock me. What do you want me to do about it? I don't have a whole lot of other things to do. This game was on fire. People loved it. It had so much critical acclaim when it came out, and just everyone wanted more. So they came out with a second game. Who gives a shit? Yeah, exactly. So they had come out with a third game. It went back to that same old sort of classic top-down bird's-eye view style that the first game was known to have. And this game was known as A Link to the Past. Everyone loved this game when it came out. It worked. It took everything about the first game and improved upon it whilst staying away from that secondary experimental stage of the game. As a sort of thing that's been as noticed by fans alike, Link to the Past is one of the fans' most favorite Zelda games. And personally, I don't see it. Don't get me wrong, it's a great game. I just feel like it's more of a rehash of the first game. I think it's like the first game redone, like what they would have done had they had that technology at the time. Because, the NES obviously wasn't as powerful as the Super NES. That's why it was called the Super NES, right? The thing about The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past and how different it is in comparison to the first game that came out was just about the first screen. Remember that first screen that piqued your adventure curiosity? This one, however, did not. You're in your bed, you get up, and there's a storm brewing. You walk outside, another pouring rain. You're on a straight line path to go where you need to go anyway. You get in there, you see your uncle's in pain. Oh boy, uncle's in pain. Great. My uncle. Yeah, I have such a close relationship with my uncle anyway. That's why he's in jail. Anyway, So you get into that stage, and you have the sword and the shield, and you start kicking some ass. And that's badass. Everyone likes to kick ass. Badass kick ass. And then all of a sudden, you're in this room. The giant guy swinging a ball around. Fuck that shit. You kill him right off the bat. Simple pattern. And who the hell is that? Is that Zelda already? Hi, shit, the game's already done. We already beat it in the first couple seconds. But one thing you notice is that you have no options anymore. There's nothing you can do unless people tell you to do it, right? So it already immediately takes away that first game charm where you were exploring caves and dungeons and killing enemies and shit, right? But it's just so cut and dry. It's right in front of you. Sure, they had the map that you could see everything and know what you're doing, but it wasn't as Final Fantasy like as the second game. And that's when, this is a great game and all, you get to the end, whatever. A couple years later, 3D Zelda game comes out. Huh, how about that, a 3D Zelda game? Everyone shit their pants because everyone thought it was going to be the next best thing since sliced bread. And you know what? When it came out, reviewers gave it 10s out of 10s. The greatest game of all time. The problem is that people tried to review A Link to the Past with Ocarina of Time. And you can't do that, and I'll explain why now. One of the most major faults with reviewing a game like A Link to the Past in comparison to Ocarina of Time just so happens to be that you're taking two games that were on very different ends of a spectrum. You took a 2D game that was fine-tuned over a course of many years, being that it's the third 2D game in the series. They experimented with the second game. That's what makes a game better, is when you come out with that first game, and people like it, they like certain things about it, but you have room to experiment. You try something new, people don't like it, you revert the formula, and you fix whatever was the problem in the first game. That's why A Link to the Past is considered so great for its time, because of what they did to make it so much better by keeping it the third game in the series. If A Link to the Past had been the name of the first game, and the third game was for some reason called just Legend of Zelda, I don't know why it would be, but let's just say, for this example's sake, that it is. Well, the first thing you gotta consider is that, yes, it's gonna be the first game in the series. There's gonna be flaws galore. There's gonna be many a problem with it. That's why games continue throughout their franchise. The first Mario Brothers game was great. The second one, games just have problems with seconds, don't they? But the third game, it took everything that made the first and the second game so great and just tranced them, just enhanced them, just babance them, just flance. I don't even have words. It made them great. Mario 1, fantastic. Mario 2, Mario 3, fucking amazing. One of the greatest games that I've ever had the pleasure to play. And then Super Mario World after that, people even consider that to be one of the greatest 2D Mario games of all time. And I can't help but not, agree with them. I mean, personally, my favorite's 3, but technically and technologically, the fourth Mario game in the series is considered to be one of the best because of how much it improved on the third game, which was already an improvement on the second game, which was already an experiment with the first game. You see what I'm getting at here? Every first game has a second game that experiments, changes the formula, and maybe it's not too great. Then the third game takes that first game and takes what people liked about it, enhances it, takes what people didn't like about them, and makes them like it. Which is why A Link to the Past is such a great game as it is, because it took the first game and enhanced it. The problem is, when you compare that game to the likes of Ocarina of Time was the first 3D Zelda game to ever come out ever. So, you got your first problem there. They took a game that they already had, but they had to change the formula completely. There was no more 2D. It was all about the third dimension, baby. All about that third axis. You know what I'm saying? So, that being said, it's the first game of a new series, basically. Well, let me rephrase that. It's the first game of a classic series that's already been established, but now has to be changed while keeping some of the same conventions because people like the games from the third one better, and they liked how they liked the I guess the best way that you game was you would have to maybe sort of think of it like a whole new convention that you have to, but they don't work. It's just so confusing now, isn't it? I've really put it into perspective, I hope. But again, it's the major flaw with comparing the two. You've got the third game, which fine-tuned the first game after seeing the second experiment didn't work. Now, we've got a fourth game, but it's a totally new idea. Imagine if I did this. I come out with Pepsi. People like Pepsi. It's a good taste. I'm gonna like it. Now I make it clear. Now it's called Crystal Pepsi because it's crystal clear. People are fucking throwing up and ending up in the hospital, and it's just not cool, not fun times. I come out with a third brand of Pepsi where I added a splash of cherry flavor. People like the flavor of Pepsi. People like the flavor of cherries. You put them together, it fucking works. Amazing how that happens. I took the second experiment and I cut it out of the equation, and now I got something that works. But now I come out with a whole new product. I come out with Mountain Dew. All of a sudden, everything's all sorts of fucked because now I've got a whole new thing to work with. So, when you review a game like A Link to the Past in comparison to Ocarina of Time, you're not giving it a fair bout. You're taking a game that's been fine-tuned and magnified to meet everyone's standards against a game that's brand new. But the fact that that game was brand new is what made it so amazing, because it was a perfect hit for a brand new game. Then Majora's Mask came out and fine-tuned whatever problem you had with the first game. It's like you have two timelines. No pun against the Zelda references there, but you have two timelines. Your first one is your 2D games. Your second one is your 3D games. And at some point, they have to be compared evenly. For example, you should compare Zelda 1 with Ocarina of Time. Zelda 2 with nothing, because there was no experiment between those two games. A Link to the Past with Majora's Mask. It's the only way you can really fairly compare those two games. I guess what I'm really trying to say is that you can't compare Ocarina of Time with A Link to the Past because you're not giving it a fair bout. And now I'm just repeating myself. One thing that people have complained about Ocarina of Time, specifically Eagle Raptor in his whole sequelitis thing, was that there's a lot of waiting involved with, Ocarina of Time. But he mentioned that specifically in the swordplay sections, and the part about that that's a little confusing to me is that if you've ever been in a sword fight in real life, you should know. Hell, you don't even have to be in a real sword fight to know what it's like. You have to see a sword fight. You have to have, at some point, watched The Karate Kid. I know there's no sword fight in The Karate Kid. I just want to let people know that because I don't want people jumping at me about this. The point is, if you've ever seen any sort of sword fight, if you've watched Olympic fencing, you know that at one point, there's two people fighting, one person's defending, the other person is attacking. That's how gaming... That's how sword fighting works. That's not just how gaming should work, of course, because gaming shouldn't be about real life. We don't want realism in our video games. But at the same time, when it comes to sword fighting, I don't see the joy in just walking around mindlessly slashing up enemies. Where's the fun in that? Sure, I can hit a keys, and that's it. It's done. That's all. Okay, I hit a keys. Awesome. Is that the end of the game? Is that what we're going with here? Ah! No! I want more than that. I want more than that. And you want more than that too, and you know it. You know it, and you're only lying to yourself by not saying you know it. But you do know it. You want more than that. You want sword fighting. You don't want to just slash through enemies like they're bushes. That's not what you want. Another big problem that he mentioned was the Z-axis and the Z-targeting. Yeah, okay, there's a whole new Z-axis, and it's always there, because guess what? 3D always has a Z-axis. So there's a keys above you. Big goddamn deal if there's a keys above you. The point of the keys being above you is so that you just take back that arrow, and you look at it, and you're like, I can do this. And you draw your arrow into the bow, and you bring it back, and you let it fly, and it automatically, almost like homing, hits the keys every time. Oh, but then there's one coming behind you? Do your quick spin. Better yet, just slash, because your arc in that game, in a horizontal slash, covers pretty much half of your back anyway, and it'll take out the enemy. There's no problem with the Z targeting. I don't get where the problem with it that you saw was. You also just aren't very good at the game. And I have proof of that too. But that's not a personal attack at you. I love your videos. I think you're hilarious. I just think you're not very fairly giving Ocarina of Time the due it deserves.